Hello, beautiful, and welcome to the Happy and Healthy and Midlife Summit for women who want to cruise through midlife feeling stronger, confident, and fulfilled. I'm your host, Sherry Jibb, and joining me today is Dr. Susan Brown, PhD. She's a medical anthropologist, noted researcher, a New York State certified nutritionist, and the author of the best-selling book, The Acid Alkaline Food Guide, and it's been translated into 7 languages. Dr. Brown has devoted her 40-plus year career to exploring promising nutritional and lifestyle pH therapies, educating the public, as well as working one-to-one with clients from around the world through the Center for Better Bones. In her decades of experience, she has authored more than 1,000 articles and produced hundreds of videos on pH balance, the alkaline diet, and natural bone health. Dr. Brown pioneered the natural approach to bone health for over 30 years. She was the first to prove that using only natural methods, nearly every woman can build strong bones for life. Incorporating her research and the latest science, her 6-point natural program, including the alkaline diet, exercise, digestion, detoxification, and the 20 key bone building nutrients, has helped tens of thousands of women take control of their health and enjoy long, active, happy lives. Currently, she conducts consultations at the Center for Better Bones in East Syracuse, New York, and via telephone with patients worldwide. Welcome, Dr. Brown. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure to be with you.
I'm so excited to have you here. I have been receiving your newsletter for a couple years now, been on your newsletter list, and you are just sharing, educating and sharing such great things with women. So thank you so much for all the work you do in this world and your superpower of working on bone health. I love it.
Yeah. Okay.
First question I have for you is, what does being happy and healthy mean to you?
Well, actually, to me, being happy is the spontaneous fulfillment of desire. So you say, okay, I'm desiring to have a good night's rest. And then we organize all that energies that bring that together. Or I'm desiring to have a lovely meal. And someone says, hey, let's come over to my house. I've got this lovely food. Happiness is, to me, the fulfillment of desire. And when we're lined up with our energy, that very often happens. So there's many ways to look at happiness, but it is an emotional state that I see associated with fulfillment of desire, but also just a sense of adventure in life. We don't, like the sages say, everything doesn't always go our way. Sometimes it goes my way, sometimes it goes your way. So also happiness pertains to the ability to maintain equanimity, peace, graciousness when it's just not going your way. So the idea of flexibility is probably really important, and resilience.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that. So today we are going to dive into staying stronger longer, natural alternatives for healthy bone. And so we'll start with, how does exercise impact our bone health?
Well, years ago, decades ago, when I started studying this, I asked a very smart doctor, I said, what do you think the best thing you can do for bone health? And she was very clear. It's exercise. And you might know that I'm an anthropologist by first profession. And we know from this work, looking around the world and looking at other cultures, particularly pre-technology, people did a lot of, the body was meant to move, and we build strength when we load the muscles and we load the bones. And so exercise is the foremost way to maintain and build bone strength, because we're showing the body that it needs to have stronger bones. The body is not going to put energy into building bone, and we forget that we only have a certain amount of energy and we only have a certain amount of resources. And the body's always saying, well, how should I spend this vitamin D I have? Or how should I spend this magnesium? And it's always for the highest first, for what's most important to survival. So it's really important to know that nature will not build strong bones unless we show nature we need strong bones. And we show nature we need strong bones by the muscles pulling on the bone. And it's actually, or if I hop up and down, It's actually the bending of bone that sends a signal for the osteoblasts to get to work and build new bone. And so it's quite simple. Decades ago, a famous physician named Harold Frost noted that, where you have strong muscles, you're going to have strong bones. And where you have chronically weak muscles, you're going to have weak bones. And that pretty much is really excellent. In fact, if any of you have followed the work of Belinda Beck or followed my blogs, my interviews I do on betterbones.com, Belinda Beck is an Australian researcher, a physician who has looked at exercise over decades. And she has strength training programs, you'd say almost like Olympic weightlifting with women 60, 70, 80, they're building like 10% of bone mass. You can build bone with exercise. However, you have to be trained very specifically. It has to be safe. You need to use the bone for Mother Nature to put energy into bone.
Interesting. That is so true, right? We don't think about that. So what is our best type of exercise?
Well, a simple guideline is to think, if you build muscle, you build bone, because the muscles you build are through using an unusual force. You see, you must do something you're not used to. If I'm used to walking 3 miles every day, that's good. It stimulates bone some, but the bone becomes accustomed to that. So maybe I walk 3 miles one day and then I hop and skip in the evening. You need to vary the type of exercise because the bone accustoms and the whole body accustoms to what you're doing. The best exercise, well, let me put it like this. Any exercise is good exercise. Today, the average person we're extremely sedentary. We spend all our time in front of these computers. We have a real issue with maintaining strength as we age. Keep in mind that the average person loses 45% of their muscle and 45% of their bone as they go from 35 to 85. If you look at older people, you'll see this, you're going to lose, and many people lose half their muscle and half their bone. They grow together and they go down together. So if you go into, say, I'm at menopause and I really want to stay stronger longer, that's our motto, actually, stay stronger longer. I've got to do substantial exercise, put substantial load on this body to keep the muscle mass I have, because the tendency is to lose substantial. And if you ever doubt it, you just look at an older person. There's many things that contribute to that, particularly pH balance, which we can talk about later. But so you want to do strength training exercises. And we typically think of these people that are building through the Australian Bone Clinic, or people can look at my blog. The one blog I wrote is, how did Cindy build so much bone? In 18 months, she built 14% of her hip. And this was strength training like squats and deadlifts and farmer's carries, but working up on the weights very substantially. Now, you don't have to, if you like that kind of exercise, it's great because you will build muscle. And a lot of women like to feel buff, like to feel strong. If you say, that's not my thing, then we also know that with yoga, there's some interesting studies from India, just doing yoga 5 days a week, 1 hour, where they actually did postures, standing, sitting, a variety of postures. They actually did a few repetitions of each posture, and they would actually even rest between postures, which is really important, and even chant at the end. And of course, they're resting at the end with the breathing exercises. They were able to build like 1% of bone. So yoga is very good. Tai Chi is very good. Qigong is very good because they work with the energy flow within the body and they reduce the hormones of distress. One of the biggest causes of bone loss is cortisol. And whether it's from worrying too much, or whether it's from using steroid medications, or whether it's just from stress, if you do these mind-body exercises, and I think, Sherry, this is the kind of thing you teach,
yes,
those exercises actually reduce cortisol. And so I have the feeling that those exercises, while you might not build gigantic bone, you can maintain very good bone strength, and you reduce the tendency to fall. Thing you keep in mind is people fracture, bones just don't break. You hear, oh, I was standing and my bone break. Well, that's very rare, and you can almost guarantee that person's done steroid medications in their life or other medications that have terrifically weakened bone. Bones fracture because of falls. And so you need to see, how can I keep my balance? How can I keep my strength so I can easily move up and down and not run the risk of falling if I move in this direction or that direction? So the work you do with mindful exercises, extremely important. And I think we'll find in the long run, it's just as effective. And you see studies now on Tai Chi, yoga. There's a few studies on Pilates. It's very difficult to do a long-term study on bone. It's very expensive. So you don't see many of them with these mindful exercises. But the mindful exercises are a very powerful way of maintaining total body strength and bone strength.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. I love that because there's a nice diversity in that for whatever, and just a question when you're lifting, using weights. So a lot of what we're hearing now about women in midlife and beyond is heavier weights. And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's pretty clear. I mean, you have to challenge the body. If I'm used to lifting this weight, my muscles can maintain it. Now, there's two strategies in strength training. I could take this lightweight, and instead of doing it 10 times, I do it 100 times. It's called low weight multiple repetitions. And like the body pump, some people might know the body pump program at the gyms. Well, it's kind of moderate weights, but it's multiple repetitions. The other thing is high intensity, high weights. And you say you can only do 10 curls with it. You do the maximum weight you can do. So these are different training styles. The thing about the maximum weight is you don't have to spend so much time because you quickly exhaust the muscle. But when we talk about exercise, it's just really important that we all get to know ourselves and say, I might like to be a weightlifter, but it doesn't work for me. I get too exhausted, or I find I hurt my joints, so we really have to look at our own character and what is fun for us, because exercise we will not continue if it's not fun. And a lot of times when you start doing Qigong and Tai Chi, you start to notice the energy. You start to, wow, I see there's more dimensions to me. I can feel all this energy around me. And that's motivation enough to keep going. So yeah, look into yourself first. Give them all a try. We say in our program, we have a course called The Better Bone Solution. It's an online course. We give it in person at times. In fact, we give it at places like Kirpalo and the Art of Living. In fact, we're going to Kirpalo again next May. Great to have people join us there. And it's a 4 or 5 day course. And we talk about different types of exercise. And it's good to try them all, but then kind of settle on your program. We know you have to exercise at least 2 hours a week, strength training, to try to maintain bone density, and 3 if you want to build. And then, of course, you got the issue that menopause. The average woman is losing 10% of her bone mass in the first year before the last period to like 7 or 8 years after. Some women lose 20%. Your audience, if they're in menopause, and getting near menopause, that's a great time to bear down on bone and get your exercise program going.
Okay. All right. Great tips. Absolutely great. Love those. Okay, let's talk about pH balance. What is it?
Well, I was just thinking about balance. The ancients say that where there's perfect balance, there's perfect health. And if you look at it as an anthropologist, you see this whole thing of evolution of the whole planet, much less of our beings, has to do with the seeking of balance. So this system would not work if we didn't have the right number of ants and right number of cockroaches and the right number of oxygen in the air. So all of it is an experiment of the great divine putting these mixes together to see where you get balance. Because in balance, then you have smooth, friction-free functioning. And one of the major balances, I mean, you think of it, one single cell produces thousands of chemical reactions every second, and you have 60 billion cells. I mean, it's incomprehensible, the nature of the human body and how it is all just one single unit working so well. And it has many balances. And we have to have temperature in the right range. Our hearing is in a particular range. Our blood calcium has to be in a particular range or we die. And pH is very specific. For the enzymes to function, to produce protein, to have the immune system well, to digest food, we need a very specific pH in the blood. That is 735 to 745. If you get much, that's slightly alkaline, I mean to say. Neutral is 735 to 745, the blood must be. And the body will do anything to maintain that, including breaking down bone, because bone turns out to be a gigantic reserve of alkalizing mineral compounds. And so your body said, okay, nature said you can have so many of these enzymes working, so many protein production, but they're all dependent on a particular pH. We're going to guarantee you have that pH by making sure the blood, which basically nourishes the whole body, has the proper pH. And we're going to give you this bone chock full of reserve so you can always call on it if you can't eat for a long time, or if there's just not the quality of food that has these alkalizing minerals. So pH is a balance that's mandated by evolution, that we have to have a very particular pH in the blood. Now, when you look at the cells, there can be more flexibility in pH, but a tiny change in pH of the cell causes dramatic, you can get a 10 times reduction in protein synthesis just by a slight shift in pH. And of course, if you shift pH too much towards the acidic, you will die. And so nature is treating the highest first, and so it makes sure that pH is in line. And to understand it in simple lay terms, pH is about mineral adequacy. Just like we've acidified the soils, we've acidified the air with this acid rain, we've acidified the ocean so much that the corals are being bleached out, and the Australian Great Barrier Reef is being totally bleached and destroyed because we're putting all these hydrocarbons, all these acids into the air. They're coming down on the earth, they're killing trees, they're killing plants. That acid condition is not sustainable with life. And so that's why statues break down, because they're lime, and that lime then is broken down by acid. And so it's a whole environmental phenomenon. We're acidifying everything through our industrial processes and the way we produce energy, and we're acidifying our bodies. And bone is the first to suffer. Bone is the great savior. Bone is what protects us from severe acid conditions.
Fascinating. Fascinating.
And here's something fascinating. Talk about exercise. How else does the body protect from acid conditions is muscle. In the muscle, we store this amino acid called glutamine. That glutamine, when the body gets need for alkalizing compounds, it breaks down the glutamine, it makes ammonium, and you end up making ammonia, and that ammonia is a very strong buffer. If you've ever known older people who are sick and their urine smells like ammonia, it's because they're breaking down muscle to buffer the acid so they can stay alive at the cost of losing muscle. That's why if you want to stay stronger longer, you got to take care of your muscle and your bone, and pH is one key actor in that.
Absolutely fascinating. My brain is just like bringing this in. I've got over a page of notes. It's amazing.
And you look at the environment. I mean, that's the thing that what we've done to the environment. You go to Florida, the waters are so hot that all you have is jellyfish, because they can tolerate the acid hot water. And you're seeing all these species are being destroyed because they cannot manage both in the acidity, which comes right along with the heat, you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know you talk about 20 key bone nutrients. What are those?
Well, you know, Sherry, I began looking at bone health years ago, decades ago. And those were the days they just said, take calcium. And they said outrageous things like take 2,000 milligrams of calcium. I always said that doesn't make any sense. And I started looking at all the nutrients that are important to bone. And obviously, every nutrient is important to bone, but there are 20 key nutrients that are directly related to bone health. Everything from manganese, zinc, copper, boron, of course, calcium and magnesium, silicon. So I identified these nutrients, and I help people replenish those nutrients both in their diet, and often we have to use supplement forms because it's very difficult. You know, you have to eat probably 13 half-cup servings, or at least 14 half-cup servings of fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds to even get enough potassium to alkalize, or enough magnesium. Nobody does it. In the United States now, 1 out of 3 people doesn't even eat 1 fruit or 1 vegetable a day. And we're talking 13 servings. So it's like a way difference between what we evolved on, what our body says, we need this, and we got accustomed to this over years of evolution, and our chemistry works on this basis, and we're not giving it those minerals that it needs.
Yeah, that is so true.
Yeah.
So we're finding most of these in our fruits, our vegetables, nuts, seeds.
Vegetables, major source. Fruits, nuts and seeds, herbs and spices are very good too.
Oh, okay.
We've forgotten the value, the great antioxidant phytochemical value of herbs and spices.
Nice.
And you need adequate protein. So my book, The Acid Alkaline Food Guide, and we actually have if a person says, oh, I'm interested in pH, you can actually see how acid you are by measuring your first morning urine. We've provided this little kit, and the kit has the book, The Acid Alkaline Food Guide, which will help you see which foods are acid forming, which foods are alkalizing. And it's not impossible. You can identify the fruits and the vegetables that are most alkalizing. You can see which ones you like. You can choose those, and you can measure your first morning urine. So you can see, if a person says to me, how do I know if I have enough minerals? I say, simply get our little kit, measure your first morning urine. We have all instructions on how to do it, and you're going to see if you have enough minerals. If you do not have enough minerals, you don't have a fighting chance of staying stronger longer, because every single disease, as Linus Pauling suggested, is related to a mineral deficiency.
Okay. Okay. And we can get that off your website. We can order it straight off your website.
Sure.
Good. Good.
We have both betterbones.com is where I've written 1,000 articles. And then we have hundreds of videos on YouTube. And then Alkaline for Life is another website. So I did this work for a long time. And then I said, they're not the high quality nutrients that people need. My clients would not be able to get the combination of all those 20 key nutrients I wanted to see, and in alkalizing forms and in professional grades that don't have fillers and binders. So we developed another site called Alkaline for Life, where we offer the products that I think are the very best.
Excellent. Good. We shall check that out for sure.
Sure.
I could talk to you for another few hours and pick your brain, but we said we were going to keep it to 30 minutes. Okay. And so we will. Is there any parting thoughts that you want to leave women with?
The latest thing I'm fascinated with is the amazing, intelligent, and wonder of the human body. The human body is the crown jewel of all of evolution. We have a capacity that no other animal has. We have a capacity to be aware that we're aware. We can make conscious choice. We can change the course of our life. Where a dog lives like a dog, it doesn't really make a lot of choices. We have an immense capacity to create what we'd like in this life. I suggest we should all sit down and see, what do I want to create with my life? Mm-hmm. And then I might work to develop a plan. And if it's life supporting, like everything people do for bone in my program is going to be good to help prevent cancer, diabetes. It's going to be good for their spiritual evolution, because we start looking at, what is the real purpose of my life, and what service can I be of this life, and what do I need to develop so I'm actually more of service to myself, to my own body. If I have a bad habit of going to bed, watching TV and going to bed late, I'm not doing a service to myself. I can be less effective in the world. So to have first a great respect for our own supreme intelligence. I'm very fond of Acharya Sunya, who's an Ayurvedic teacher now here in the US, who talks about the sovereign self, getting in touch with that divine nature, particularly the divine feminine within us, which is the rise of the time of the feminist and the feminine energy, and mm-hmm. to be aware of that, and to get in touch with that sovereign self, with your own true self, your own true soul, and what your mission is and what you would like to do, and whatever's keeping you from it. Develop a little program to get stronger and have more fulfillment.
I love that. Absolutely. That's really great. I have one more question for you. And what is the difference? Because I get asked this all the time. What is the difference between the osteopenia and the osteoporosis?
All of that is made up. And if you take my course, you'll see that 40 years ago, they developed this bone density machine. There was no attention to osteopenia. Osteopenia means just like leukopenia is kind of a lower number of white blood cells, osteopenia is just a lower number of bone mass. It was never a concept that was paid any attention to. When they developed this bone density deal, they decided they had 10 men it's a long story, but after 40 years of, or 20 years of bone testing, they got together and they said, we're going to just define osteoporosis by DEXA. Osteoporosis today is defined by DEXA bone density T-score. That is not the true definition of osteoporosis. That's made up and it's not working. It's in its state of climatic downfall because you cannot predict fracture by DEXA bone density. Just the 80% of the fractures occur in people that don't have an osteoporotic bone density by DEXA. That means they don't have the -25. They have either they have a better bone density or even normal bone density. So it's kind of a made up thing. The true definition and the earlier definition of osteoporosis is bones that are so weak that they cannot stand up to everyday activity. You know, you do some little thing, you take a fall from standing position, you break. Those are weak bones. To our mind, and the old definition was always osteoporosis are bones so weak they don't stand up to everyday activity. So then they said, but when they developed this way to measure what they call bone density, then they say, well, but there's a bunch of people that have not average bone density, but they're a little lower. We're going to call those osteopenia. So it's all made up. Osteopenia was never meant to be a diagnosis. I would say, if I was speaking strongly, I'd say you're a fool if you take to heart the concept of osteopenia. You must find other ways to measure bone strength. For example, if you fractured, it's clear. If you fractured a low trauma fracture, it's clear you have bone weakness. If you have a lot of receding gums, you're on the track to having bone weakness. If you're ever in question, look at your muscle mass. There's that strong link. Bone density, osteopenia is very related to muscle mass, to body size. Smaller bone people measure much lower on these machines. You're going to see light, small weight, small bone people are going to be told they have osteopenia. And I see so many women waste their life energy fretting over this. If you have a real concern, look into it. Do our program, find out, do I really have bone weakness? Are there medical tests you can do to see what's going on? But osteopenia is a made-up definition for a particular T-score they've developed. Osteoporosis is the truth, the obvious fact, the proven fact that bones do not stand up to everyday activity, and that is fracture. So, so don't be frightened, but we say take heart and take action. Say, maybe my family fractured, my mother fractured, they got me scared with osteopenia. I am kind of thin. Just sit down and do the program, learn about it, take charge. That's our message, take charge. Don't believe what anybody tells you. Say, well, let me look and see. Let me look and see. If it's true I have bone weakness, let's find out why. And let's work to correct it.
Absolutely. I love that. Take action. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Always the answer. Always
well, good luck with all of it. I appreciate your helping to generate people's self-empowerment. That's what we're talking about today. This is an age of self-empowerment.
It so is. Dr. Brown, I want to thank you so much for joining us and sharing your expertise and your superpower with us, all your years of experience in bone health and alkaline, and lots to think about here. So thank you so much. And to all of our viewers, lots to write down here. I hope you've got your notes, and check out Dr. Brown's website and go to her speaker page. We will have everything listed there, how to find her, everything you need there. All right. Thank you so much. Until we see each other again.
Thank you.